Part 27. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 261. Chapter 261 Everything I say is true. Lee Ji-eun chattered for a long time before leaving. Wait until the old man has just left. Lee Baiken pushed the person against the wall. I mean everything I say. The breath that belongs only to men rushes towards my face. Sunian couldn't help but feel a little confused. I am not trying to please you, nor am I trying to fool the old man, but I am serious about every word. I think you are good, you are better than that woman, and I am glad that you are still by my side when I am sober. This is what Lee Baiken said sincerely. He occasionally thought that if he were sober, Sunian would not be there. A person is controlled by the plot. Controlled within one's own body. Now he realizes that Sunian is actually a light in his life, guiding him step by step out of the darkness. And she is indeed like light. It seems that it is very close to me, but when I want to reach out and touch it, I can't touch it. Such an atmosphere made Sunian want to break away. Actually, when I was in the conference room, I had been restraining myself from looking at you, but even so, your every move was in my sight. The distance between the two of them was very close at the moment, and he was almost close to her ear. When Sunian heard this, he subconsciously wanted to laugh. It's just that Lee Baiken didn't make her laugh. When you were talking for a minute, your eyes glanced at me, then looked back at me for 50 seconds, and then another minute passed. As Lee Baiken murmured to himself like a Buddha, those pictures appeared in Sunian's mind unconsciously. You may not know that I used a lot of effort to keep myself from losing my composure. Do you know what that feels like? I want to hug you and have some contact with you, so that I can feel that there is actually no distance between us. It's very far, but I think it's rare for you to be so happy. If I disturb your mood, you might be unhappy. The man's chin was pressed against her cheek. If we talk about close contact at this moment, then this is the only one. But Sunian seemed to be able to feel the heat on the man's body at this moment. Lee Baiken knew that Sunian might not believe it, but he still wanted to say, but I still restrained myself. You were shining like the sun at that time. I feel that what I have to do is not to stop your light, but to protect your light. In a narrow space. The atmosphere became a little ambiguous. I am a bit clumsy and tongue-tied. I didn't think this was a shortcoming before, but now I have a profound understanding of the importance of being able to speak. Can you give me some time? Sunian's throat was a little dry at the moment, and she managed to spit out a sound. Give me time, let me become eloquent, make you happy, and make you understand my heart better. Every word is sincere. Sunian wanted to push him away at this time. But no matter how hard I use my force, there is no way to push it away. Lee Baiken felt Sunian's strength and let go of her. But before letting go, he said in her ear, at this time, I really feel that I may have loved you a long time ago, maybe hundreds of years ago, but I forgot about it during reincarnation. Then why didn't you say it for so long from work to home, and why are you saying it now? Lee Baiken just felt that Sunian was worried about Fang Yulan. So I wanted to handle Fang Yulan's side well and make everything go smoothly. But I didn't expect it. The old man is here. But of course, Lee Baiken couldn't tell Sunian. Instead, he said, didn't I just say it? I'm clumsy with my tongue. I think I need to think of words and think about what you want to hear. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 262. Chapter 262 There is no shortcut to love. You didn't make a draft, right? Sunian said subconsciously. But after saying this, Sunian regretted it. Hey, what's going on with me now? It's like I don't have a door to my mouth. It's so embarrassing. How can I be so embarrassed now? But Li Baikan nodded under Sunian's eyes. Sunian's heart suffocated. It is indeed a draft. I have said that I have never been in love and will not get along seriously with women. Maybe you thought I was teasing you before asking you to write about love at this point. Li Baikan was deeply moved. Sighing, actually, I'm just hiding my shallowness. I'm afraid you'll laugh at me. I've been chasing after that woman for so many years, and I still don't know how to fall in love with a woman. Sunian. Did I hear this correctly? What is he talking about? Although Li Baikan considers himself a man, it is not a good behavior to slander women, but with the way the old man is, if he is worried about something, then the old man may find Sunian's next wife. And with the way Lan Min is, he can just slander him if he slanders him. So please be a little considerate and forgive me. Forgive me for being a little too eager. But now I understand that love is not something to be rushed. I will learn slowly in the future. Sunian can't say anything negative because of Li Baikan's attitude at this moment. But I still feel in my heart that he is telling lies. But a few days later, she saw something handwritten by a man in Li Baikan's office, and her mood was really complicated. Li Baikan rubbed the tip of her nose with the tip of his nose. I will not worry about my own face in the future and let you pay. I will do it myself in the future. After all, there is no shortcut to love. This is what Li Baikan summarized in the past few days. He had always wondered before why Sunian always thought of the old man when something happened and always wanted to cut him off. Always want to use some means to make Sunian fall in love with him suddenly. But love is really not calculated. There are no shortcuts either. At this time, he thought about his dream. Sunian was surprised to find out she was pregnant. If the dream is true, in this life, he is willing to be the person closest to her and the person she can most rely on. Li Baikan had a dream again. This time it was another scene of Sunian being surrounded. That's right, it was connected to the scene in the dream where Sunian was surrounded by all those directors. How on earth was she forced to have amniocentesis? Li Baikan watched as Sunian's hands were clenched tightly into fists, and the veins on his forehead popped out. He could clearly feel her anger at this moment. That is her blood relative. At this moment, the old man's voice rang out, "Ha ha, I'm not dead yet, and you are starting to make things difficult for my people. Don't you take me seriously." Li Baikan subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the old man's voice. The old man is here and he should not let Sunian suffer any more injustice. But the old man walked up to Sunian and yelled at her directly, "Sunian, tell me what you want to do. It's only been a few days, do you want to rebel?" When Sunian heard this, he subconsciously wanted to say something. But the old man didn't give Sunian a chance to say anything. "You have pretended to be too good in front of me for so many years. You have always been obedient in front of me. Look at you now, and just listen to what I say." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 263. Chapter 263 I, Sunian, just want to live an upright life. The directors around him became excited when they heard this. After all, the old man has made a statement. They are better able to deal with this woman. But at this moment, the old man's voice sounded again, "How many times have I told you, don't worry about these irrelevant people. You are the mistress of the Li family and the only daughter-in-law of my Li Jianhong. As long as you want, then you can walk sideways in this world. If you are so timid, who are you slapping in the face?" These words made the director's expressions change. "Old man, you can't say that." One of the directors couldn't help but interrupt. But the old man sneered, "Why can't I say that? She is my son's wife, and I personally recognize her as my daughter-in-law. What qualifications do you have to question it? Tell me, are you trying to explain to me? What right do you have to question my daughter-in-law, Li Jianhong? Li Baikan looked at the old man. He seemed to understand why Sunian relied so much on the old man. Why, no matter what happens, I immediately think of the old man. In such circumstances, unconditional support. If it were him, he might be like Sunian. If she is just your daughter-in-law, then of course we are not allowed to comment on this. But this woman Sunian wants to inherit everything in Baikan and inherit Baikan's position in the company. I can understand your thoughts, but the company affects many people. Livelihood. The old man immediately scolded him with all his face. Then tell me, who should I give it to? Should I give it to you or you? Although these directors do have the intention of annexation. Li Baikan, who was standing next to him, knew very well that these directors just saw that Sunian was a womanizer and felt that Sunian was easy to bully. Such a show of force to scare Sunian. Even after a period of time, with a little use of means, you can get the shares from Sunian, thus completely carving up the company. Li Baikan knew very well the methods of these old fritters. He looked at Sunian. She is still pregnant. We have to face these people. Some of the old man's words made everyone present afraid to make mistakes. At this time, Sunian knelt directly on the ground. Dad, I was wrong, but I agreed to do amniocentesis, not for anything else, just so that the child in my belly could come into this world innocently. Nian, your body, Li Jianhong, who was originally serious, now had a heartbroken expression. But the old man was interrupted by Sunian before he finished speaking. Li Baikan saw Sunian say very firmly, Dad, I know what you are worried about, but I am not afraid. As a wife and a mother, I must do it to let the child come into this world innocently. Li Jianhong closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, he looked at the people standing around him fiercely. Are you satisfied now? When the old man said this, he chuckled, You are satisfied, but I am not satisfied. All the directors were completely silent and could not utter a word. As soon as the screen changed, only the old man and Sunian were left. The old man hated the iron and said to Sunian, Nian, why are you so stupid? You have to be like this, your body. I'm not stupid, I'm doing this for my dad, for Baikan, and for my children. I don't want you to get a bad reputation because of me. I, Sunian, want to live an upright life, and my child also wants to live an upright life. He deserves the treatment he deserves. Everything. Sunian's eyes were firm. The determination in Sunian's eyes made Li Baikan really feel a little ashamed of himself. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich John Word. Chapter 264. Chapter 264. It's good enough now. Office. Li Baikan looked at the woman sitting on the sofa next to him. I thought of the dream I had last night. As long as he thinks about it, his heart will hurt. He thinks. The reason why she dreams about these is because God cannot bear to see her suffering. I hope that I, the chief culprit, can make up for her. Let her no longer suffer in this life. Li Baikan's gaze was so hot that it was impossible for Sunian not to notice. She looked in the direction of Li Baikan. What on earth is this guy doing? Why is he always staring at me? It makes me feel a little scared. Are you planning something wrong again? Sunian immediately felt that he couldn't stay here any longer. I immediately got up and planned to go to the lounge. After all, being able to roll around on a soft big bed in the lounge is much better than staying on the sofa. But unexpectedly, Li Baikan actually followed him. Baikan, are you done? Sunian watched Li Baikan lying next to him. This really surprised Sunian. No, I just feel a little tired and want to stay with you for a while. These words really made Sunian feel a little uncomfortable. What does it mean and want to stay with me for a while? Wait a minute, is this guy trying to fall in love with me? Is this how he falls in love? If so, no one with any brain would be tempted. Sunian complained and lay down. After lying down, I can't help but look at the people around me. Seems like he wants to see what the people around him are thinking. But just when Sunian looked over again, Lee Baikon's voice sounded again, actually, I'm a little lucky these days. I've done so many bad things to you before, but fortunately, this face can still attract you. Sunian. If possible, Sunian would like to slap this guy in the face right now. MD, I have seen shameless people, but I have never seen such shameless people. What does it mean that this face attracts me? Haha, but his face is really good, at least if it were a bit uglier, then I would be really embarrassed to say it. That's right, the only good thing about Lee Baikon's face is that it makes it easier for me to talk unscrupulously. Apart from that, there is no benefit at all. After all, I will be the master of the Lee group in the future. What kind of good-looking man do I want? No, just like him, if I want, there are a dozen. Sunian turned his back and did not look at Lee Baikon. Just worry about whatever you need to worry about. Worrying is in vain. After Sunian turned around, Lee Baikon also turned his head to look at her. Indeed, she knew what she was going to do in the future, and there was really no need to be tempted by him, a man who still loved someone else. Even Lee Baikon couldn't think of a reason why Sunian was tempted. It was true that he was a little self-righteous before, thinking that as long as he broke up with the old man, she would slowly rely on herself. But it turned out that he had a brain problem before, and he actually thought of him like this. Fortunately, it's not too late for him to understand now. Lee Baikon slowly approached her and hugged her carefully. But it's good enough for now. At least he was not like in the dream, unable to touch her. Lee Baikon felt Sunian's warm body and felt relieved slowly in his heart. The moment Sunian was hugged by Lee Baikon, his body couldn't help but stiffen, but after waiting for a long time, there was no movement from the man behind him. Time is slowly slipping away through these fingers. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 265. Chapter 265. This heroine is a bit too domineering. At midnight, Sunian was woken up. She opened her eyes in a daze, and when she saw Lee Baikon's face, she really wanted to go crazy. So, are you okay? Your mother. Before she could even curse, Sunian swallowed all the curse words. MD, what did this guy want to do? He almost asked me to greet my respected mother-in-law. A thief broke in. Let's catch the thief, Lee Baikon said as he put clothes on Sunian's body. Catch the thief. This made Sunian, who was already a little confused, even more confused. Lanji, you've come to steal our things. These words made Sunian wake up instantly. Lan Min came to steal something? Yes, in the novel, the heroine steals things from the villain. Not only is there no moral restraint, but it is also the climax of the plot. Thinking of such a climactic scene, Sunian suddenly became energetic. But she soon realized something was wrong. She seemed to have been wrapped up into a bear by this guy Lee Baikon. Sunian couldn't help but said, Baikon, you dress me like this. It makes it difficult for me to walk. Time is too tight. If the time is wasted, the scene will not be fun. After saying that, Lee Baikon picked her up directly and strode towards the outside. Sunian realized something after being carried by Lee Baikon for a few steps. This time, you are actually not carrying me. Hearing this, Lee Baikon's body froze slightly, thinking of the discomfort of carrying her on his shoulders before. When he thought of this, Lee Baikon felt guilty. Well, My lungs don't hurt anymore, but luckily he didn't carry me this time. You know, I ate a bit too much tonight. If he had carried me today, I might have puked on his shoulder. Jai think about that picture, and you will feel particularly beautiful. Sunian was carried to the study by Lee Baikan. Lee Baikan clicked on the screen and saw the figure of the great heroine Lan Min. I saw Lan Min walking cautiously. When you take a few steps, you will look around a few times. I have to say that the heroine's vigilance is really high. The only drawback is that she doesn't move very fast. Why is this heroine moving so slowly? Did she also eat too much? This isn't right, stealing things, and stealing things from such an important place as the Lee Group, you shouldn't eat too much. Well, this heroine is really unprofessional. Lee Baikan next to him could not help but raise the corners of his mouth. He really felt that sometimes, he couldn't keep up with Sunian's imagination. But Sunian suddenly flashed his eyes and looked at Lee Baikan beside him. Lan Min walked in through any door. Lee Baikan paused for a moment. The atmosphere is a little awkward. Then Lee Baikan uttered two words, main gate. Sunian. Why, Genman, this heroine is really too arrogant. What does it mean to go through the front door? She is here to steal things, how can she go through the front door? The heroine is indeed a heroine, she is an unusual one. It's like putting firecrackers in the of a heifer, and the evil is reaching the sky. When Lee Baikan got the news, he didn't know what to say. This Lanzi indeed did not take him seriously, nor did he take Li Shi seriously. What are you going to do now? Lee Baikan asked. Sunian was stunned after hearing this, and then pointed at himself, ask me. Lee Baikan moved closer to her, if I don't ask you, who else can I ask? Can there be ghosts in this place? He, who says there are no ghosts? I, a hungry ghost of lust, am here. I can really do whatever I want. Sunian looked at him. Lee Baikan nodded firmly under Sunian's eyes. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 266. Chapter 266, being considerate is a bit too much. An hour later. At the entrance of Lee's group. Sunian clapped the trumpet in his hand, cleared his throat, and shouted at the trumpet, people inside, listen, you are surrounded. Surrender quickly, otherwise I will be rude to you. Behind Sunian were police officers and at least 100 reporters. People inside, listen, if you don't come out, then we will drop a bomb. Lee Baikan, who was behind Sunian, frowned slightly. Josu quickly went to Lee Baikan to admit his mistake, Mr. Lee, it's my fault. I didn't get the bomb, I just got some incendiary bombs and tear gas. Do you think you should just throw them away? Throw it away, but keep some for later today so you don't have to use it next time. Lee Baikan, who was speaking, glanced down at the red date tea in the thermos cup in his hand and checked the temperature. After all, after roaring, you should moisturize your throat. After receiving the order, Josu immediately gave the men behind him a wink. A lot of tear gas and smoke bombs were thrown in immediately. Soon a man in a mess and dressed in black ran out. Reporters began to take photos one after another. Such a posture, if you didn't know better, you would think it was a press conference. Lan Min ran out and saw this posture, and he was dumbfounded on the spot. Sunian then continued to hold the loudspeaker and said, in broad daylight, who dares to come to our Lee group to steal things? Who instigated you? Anything you say now will be used as evidence in court for. Lan Min came to his senses and quickly covered his face with his hands. Don't take pictures, you guys don't take pictures. But these reporters were specially found by Lee Baikan. In addition, they have already smelled how big the news will be, and of course they want to film it. Seeing Lan Min acting so rude, Sunian, the vicious female supporting character, felt really indescribably happy. But just when Sunian was about to walk towards Lan Min, but he was stopped by Li Baikan. Before Sunian could frown, Li Baikan spoke, "You must be thirsty after talking so much just now. Take a drink to moisten your throat first, so as not to be unable to speak later." With that, he took the bottle in his hand. The thermos cup was handed over. Sunian. What does it mean? Should I say this guy is considerate? But this thoughtfulness is a bit too thoughtful. Why does it feel a little weird? However, Sunian still took it and took a sip. Such an interaction fell into Lan Min's eyes, and her eyes were really full of resentment. After Sunian finished drinking, he walked up to Lan Min and said with a smile, "Oh, isn't this Baikan's sister Lan Min? How did you get here? Why did you come to our company in the middle of the night? You came to see Baikan. Is that wrong? You came to Baikan, why did you come here in the middle of the night? What's going on? Why did the flood flood the Dragon King temple and you don't know the other family? You can do whatever you want to me," Lan Min said with firm eyes. Sunian stretched out his hand and grabbed her chin. "Tisk, tisk, look at you like this, I really feel pity for you, but I'm really curious, how shameless are you? Let's see if my husband has the attitude of begging for help." When he said this, Sunian's eyes suddenly became sharp. "Believe it or not, I will kill you." End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 267. Chapter 267. Social death is also a way to die. When Lan Min heard this, he subconsciously took a few steps back. She looked at Sunian in disbelief. You can't do this, it's illegal." These words really almost made Sunian laugh. "Breaking the law, please don't listen to what this heroine is saying. A Mary Sue heroine is actually talking to me about the law. Haha, you really have lived a long time, and you can encounter anything." Li Baikan's voice also sounded, as Mrs. Li, "As long as you think about it, you can do it." This time, Lan Min's face became even more ugly. Why do you do this, Baikan? Have you forgotten our friendship for so many years? Why do you do this?" Sunian went up and gave Lan Min a big mouth. "Why, you said why, do you think I really don't know what you want to do here? You came to steal our company's secrets, how can we be considerate of you?" After saying this, Sunian he returned to Li Baikan's side again and held his arm intimately. "It's really nice to be MRSLI." Lanji looked at the two people who were close to each other. Although she knew that Li Baikan's attitude towards her had changed. But Lan Min was actually still lying to himself during this period, and Li Baikan did this for himself, in order to be able to survive. But now she really has no way to lie to herself. Li Baikan looked at Sunian tenderly. "How do you want this woman to die?" When Li Baikan asked this question, his voice was gentle. If you didn't know better, you would have thought he was talking about love. Sunian looked calm. "I've already done it." Li Baikan? "Death in society is also a way to die." Sunian looked at Lan Shi with a smile and said, "Have you seen those cameras? Tomorrow, your image will be spread all over the world, and everyone will know your actions. Hey, 100% pure social death. Absolutely do not add any moisture. Your relatives and friends, anyone who knows you, will criticize you." "Lan Min, do you think this tastes good?" I heard Sunian say this. Li Baikan thought of the situation Sunian faced in the dream. This made Li Baikan subconsciously hold Sunian's hand. Sunian felt Li Baikan's movement and looked to the side. She thought it was because Li Baikan could no longer pretend, so he wanted to stand up for the heroine. After all, according to the normal plot, This should happen. But when she looked at Lee Baiken. But I heard Lee Baiken say, I also want to know what it feels like, Lan Mi, and since you just said that our previous friendship is like this, then you can satisfy my curiosity. Before you know what it feels like, please tell me what it is. Baiken, why did you treat me like this? No, you are not Baiken. It is impossible for Baiken to treat me like this. Who are you? But Lan Min was finishing his words. He was caught immediately. Lan Min was about to struggle, but when he saw that his captor was actually wearing a police uniform. Now she was completely panicked. At this time, Sunian's voice sounded again casually, I almost forgot to tell you, I called the police uncle before I came here, so if you have any opinions now, then you can go and tell the police uncle, this person also speaks the law. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 268. Chapter 268. It's okay to have double standards. Lanji subconsciously wanted to struggle. When Sunian just saw Lan Min moving, he immediately gloated and said, Hey, Lan Min, what are you trying to do? Do you want to arrest me? Didn't you just accuse me of breaking the law? You are also trying to break the law now, really? Then you just told me the law so righteously, you can have double standards. Sunian said so. Then Lan Min can only speak honestly. However, Lan Min was indeed a bit pitiful like this, and Sunian's kindness suddenly broke out, friendly reminder, you can shout at this time, Sir, I am wronged, Sir, I am wronged. Sunian, you called it wrong. This is not an ancient drama, so you shouldn't call it this. Lee Baiken gave a thoughtful reminder next to him. Sunian immediately put on a look of realization and said to Lee Baiken, Baiken, you should be more rigorous. Then he shouted again to Lan Min, who was about to be pulled away, I'm sorry, Lan Min, I was wrong, you should not call the adults unjust, but call the police uncle unjust. As soon as he said this, Lan Min, who was dragged away, looked extremely ugly. This makes Sunian, the vicious female supporting character, feel so happy. But it's Lee Baiken's attitude today. Sunian looked at Lee Baiken when he thought of this. Lee Baiken stretched out his hand to straighten her clothes, it's very late. Let's go home. You are recuperating your body now. If you catch a cold due to the wind, all the medicine you have taken these days will be in vain. After saying this, Lee Baiken hugged her again. Sunian could feel at this moment how cautious he was when holding her. This guy's performance this time is really great, he has tormented the heroine to this point. I'm a little curious about what this guy can do this time anyway. It's the heroine who is unlucky. Hey, actually being the heroine of a Mary Sue novel is not good either. In order to reflect the difficulty of this Mary Sue heroine, we have to arrange for her to endure a lot of hardships, but like me, the female partner, I am a complete winner in life. If it had been before, then Lee Baiken might have laughed when he heard Sunian's words. But he really can't laugh now. A winner in life? After all the suffering she has suffered, is she still a winner in life in her eyes? Josu walked up to them at this time and said respectfully, Mr. Lee, according to your instructions, the dozens of media present today will announce what happened tonight at the same time tomorrow. And the water you want me to arrange, the military company has already made arrangements. Released at the same time, Sunian said subconsciously. Is this going to ruin the heroine's reputation? This didn't happen in my previous life. Sunian was really excited when he thought of this. Lee Baiken's deep voice rang in her ears, are you curious what it would be like for Lan Min to be ruined? Sunian nodded subconsciously. Then let's go home and get some rest early, so that we can have the energy to see her ruined state tomorrow morning. Lee Baiken's voice at this moment, if you didn't know better, you would have thought it was coaxing people to sleep. Sunian couldn't help but feel hopeful. Just like that, Lee Baikin hugged Sunian and strode away in front of dozens of reporters. When a reporter saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh, "It's a pity that we can't report it. If we can report this scene, then we will definitely not worry about the popularity." "Can be reported?" The reporter came back to his senses in shock, turned his head and saw the speaker became excited. Because the person who spoke was none other than the first secretary next to Lee Baikin. "That's right, it's Josu." Josu said with a serious face, "You can report it, but you can report it in a few days. First, do the things that Mr. Lee ordered. But when you report, please pay attention to your wording and don't write randomly." When the reporter heard this, his eyes lit up. Other people around are also a little eager to give it a try. Today's PK is over, and I feel deeply for all of you who have big wallets. Tomorrow there may be another 4,000. I would like to ask the accountability editor if there are any recommendations. There are fewer authors as considerate as me now, alas. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 269. Chapter 269, Find More Navy Companies. The next day. The news that Lan Min had stolen public secrets immediately appeared everywhere. The headline news on any social software is this: "Shocked that a famous influencer stole company secrets." Famous celebrities actually used their friends' trust to steal. The rumored girlfriend of the president of Huo Group is actually able to do such a thing. Famous influencer ended up in a detention center. Sunian looked at the news on the internet and couldn't help but look at the person opposite. Because it's been a whole morning. Lee Baikin did nothing and showed no concern for Lan Min at all. But this time Sunian misunderstood. Lee Baikin really did it? For example, suggesting that Lu Jing should do something in the detention center. "Lu Jing, what should I do at the detention center?" Lu Jing, "Oh, no, I should go to the detention center to guard him now. After all, he is so timid and frightened. Hee, now is the time for me to show off." Lee Baikin, "Then pay attention, I have arranged for someone to throw a few snakes into Lan Min's room." Lu Jing, "You must be a beast. Minner is like this now. Not only do you not comfort Minner, you are also adding insult to injury." Lee Baikin, "It's not about adding insult to injury. Only in this way can she understand who really treats her. After all, Huo Linyuan's attitude towards her was not good at all, but Lan Min still loved him with all her heart. I have done so many things before, but I can't catch up, so I think a woman can't be too nice to her, she has to be cruel. But if you can comfort her, then I will feel more comfortable doing so. If it happens, then I will thank you very much." After an hour, Lee Baikin received the news that Lu Jing sent people to deal with venomous snakes urgently. However, Lee Baikin still felt it was a pity. It's a pity that Lu Jing still has some brains and is not dealing with deadly poisonous snakes. Lee Baikin couldn't help but start to wonder, would it be possible for him to kill Lan Min if he borrowed Lu Jing's hand? This is indeed a problem. Just when Lee Baikin was thinking about it, he happened to catch Sunian looking over. "I heard her complaining about why she didn't move. What's wrong, are you bored, do you want me to go out with you?" Sunian shook his head when he heard this. After shaking his head, Sunian couldn't help but say, "Now there are bad voices outside about Lan Min. Josu is the best navy company we have found. It is said that it has a good reputation in the industry. What's wrong, do you think it is not enough? If you feel it is not enough, then I will ask Josu to find a few more navy companies," Lee Baikin said seriously. He felt that he wanted to make Sunian believe that he was no longer the Lee Baikin he used to be. "You must show an attitude. Now Li Baikan began to think about Lan Min through Lu Jing. After all, if the heroine Lan Min died, Sunian would not think that he was still acting in this situation. Thinking about it this way, it is indeed a good idea. Look for a few more navy companies. Sunian swallowed silently. Yes, now is the critical time to ruin Lan Min's reputation. Of course, we must work harder. These words really made Sunian not know what to say. Li Baikan's solemn and serious voice sounded again. Sunian, if you have any ideas, you can tell me and you can help me with your ideas. Li Baikan's eyes were very sincere at this moment. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 270. Chapter 270. As expected, the male protagonist is a cowhide. Just at this time, Josu hurriedly opened the door and came in. Mr. Li, Huo Linyuan went to the police station to bring Lan Min out. Sunian's heart suddenly jumped. As expected, the male protagonist is a cowhide. However, a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Josu, look for the reporter who was next to me yesterday to see if there is any video of Lan Zhen asking me to abide by the law, and then check the surveillance video of Huo Linyuan going to the police station. Finally combine the two into one. After saying that, Sunian thought of something. What should I do if Huo Linyuan, the main character, destroys surveillance cameras? Actually, there is no need for surveillance cameras. I have already arranged for people to hide outside the police station, so I ensure that the video is high definition. Li Baikan's unhurried voice appeared again. Sunian. I have never thought of how Li Baikan thought of this. Does Li Baikan really want Lan Min to be ruined? Impossible. If this is really the case, then what should I do? Now the plot is completely messed up. Sunian couldn't help but start to feel restless and uneasy. At this moment, she was suddenly embraced in his arms. Now that I think about it, I was really stupid before. I did so many things for a woman who didn't love me and was someone else. Just take what the old man thinks of me now. The look in his eyes is like looking at a fool. Sunian. Turns out this guy still knows. So I have to change something. After all, I am already so old, and it feels a bit weird to be looked at by the old man like that all the time. These words almost made Sunian laugh out loud. No, I am a professionally trained person, I cannot laugh, absolutely cannot laugh. Li Baikan looked at the woman who was trying her best to hold back her laughter, and then sighed deeply. You won't make fun of me in your heart, right? Ha 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 ha, I don't laugh. It would be strange if I don't laugh to death. Sunian still approached Li Baikan and said in a sweet voice, how could I make fun of you? I can only feel sorry for Baikan and how wrong you have been. At the same time, I envy Lan Min for being able to get your love, not like me, eh? What are you sighing for? I was just blind before. Now my eyes are healed and I can see you. After Li Baikan said this, he kissed Sunian on the face. Thank you for curing me's eyes. Li Baikan didn't know how to love, but he thought it was right to say more nice things. Even if Sunian doesn't believe it, it can still make Sunian happy. As he spoke, he put Sunian's hands on his eyes. Sunian used his fingertips to roam around Li Baikan's eyes. At this moment, Li Baikan looked at the reflection in Sunian's eyes, but I have been too stupid before. The old man may not believe it. I have to think of a way to make him believe that I am really not interested in that Lan Min, I really want that Lanzi to pay the price. I don't know if it's Sunian's illusion. Although this man kept talking about the old man. But why did she feel that she was saying this to herself? Sunian, can you help me? Li Baikan said warmly. After all, I am so old. If word spreads, I will always be lectured by the old man as a child. It will really be a bit ugly. This made the serious Li Baikan and Sunian unable to say anything to refuse. But before Sunian could answer, Li Baikan kissed her cheek. but it doesn't matter. I think as long as I do enough, the old man will believe me. End of this chapter.